Um, Welcome to another episode of PG Radio. Thank you guys so much for your support, for continuing to let me do what I find so much pleasure in doing for a living, for my major occupation. This episode, I have a conversation, a very interesting conversation with a very interesting man. I think you should know. His name's Bucker Max. At least his popularity, his artistic moniker is Bucker Max. Bucker Max is a comic book artist, and comic book artists to me are particularly interesting people. And part of the reason why they're so interesting is something like this. I'll try and build the proposition from first principles, so try and follow. I think all storytelling means, all of them together, are essentially information distribution mechanisms, right? At the end of the day, a story, a film, a theater production, a poem is basically information being passed on, right? And they all have different means and ends of passing this information along. All these mediums have different ways of passing information along. And I think what is unique about comic books is that it allows you the perfect amount of distance from the laws of your own universe to explore ideas that you could not explore before. For instance, I'm sure some of the people who listen to my show have watched Rick and Morty. And as soon as you're able to introduce somewhere where a person can regrow their hand instantly, that idea becomes more visible. Because in our day-to-day Bollywood, Hollywood productions, doing that to a human, one, is technically so challenging, and two, is almost defiant of the general metaphysical principles, the rules of the rules, right? So a rule emerges from the idea that if something's gone, it's gone, so the metaphysics itself can be violated using comic books, and they allow for a sense of distributing an idea of the world that is far more unique, that has the ability to capture far more, let's say, predictive, speculative elements of the future. And it has the means of communicating itself to us in a very absurd, reflective fashion. So with comics in general, with comedians in general, and especially with Sumit Bucker's comic art, it's very evident that you can find a way to look at yourself, the larger context of yourself, society, and think about how absurd your situation is. So by being able to create a world that does not have to be real, but exists in parallel regardless, you acquire a new vantage point, a new way to look at your own self. And that, I think, is what comic books facilitate. In this conversation, that is the question Sumit and I were seeking. At least I was seeking. Sumit turns out is a very charming, very hilarious gentleman. And we went to talk about how comics were such an important part of both of our childhoods. I'm sure less so me than him. He grew up in a time when comics were a little more popular than they were by the time I was, roughly the age. But I was still reading a lot. Tinkle, Champak, Nandan, all those things essentially made me who I am today. And why there was so much Chacha Chaudhary when I was younger. He was such a canonical figure, and it seems like there is almost none anymore. And why is it that the Indian comic scene is still reticent to explore the boundaries of what is possible and what is not? And through the means of this conversation, through the means of the several jokes that Sumit cracks at my expense, I think I had a great time. I think you guys, if you're interested in understanding how the many forms of literature shape the way we think, and how the many forces of economics control and restrict art forms, this would be the kind of a conversation you'd be interested in. That's it. Welcome to the show. Have a good time. And if you haven't subscribed and you are slowly listening to my show, come on, thank me. Subscribe. If you're on YouTube, press the subscribe button. If you're on Spotify, if you're on iTunes, press the follow button, whatever it is. You will find it on podcast apps. It's usually near the name of the show on the top of the screen. On YouTube, it's just right down here. That's it. That's it, bro. That's it. You've got it. You'll have a good time. Thank you so much, Sumit, for doing this. This has been in the pipeline for months now, right? This has been in the pipeline before I gave up on trying to get in-person interviews. I was like, you know what? I'll just do Zoom. And then I was like, I have a list somewhere of people I wanted to interview back in India. And then I was like, what the hell am I doing? I need to talk to Bucker Max, right? So tell me, what the hell is Bucker Max?
So Bucker Max literally translates to Bucker means to bullshit, and Max means maximum. So it roughly translates to maximum bullshit.
Right.
And that's more or less it. It's not a really well thought out name, but
it's a bad marketing move.
No, matlab, it's a expression more or less, which me and a friend of mine invented, and we thought कि अच्छा नाम है to use here.
It is catchy on the tongue. I'm not going to deny that. I'd rather not call you Sumit ever. I'd rather just call you Bucker Max forever, going this point forward. But I'm curious.
does this name serve as your artistic moniker, or is this just a brand of creativity that you know, channel? So it's only bullshit that I make through my creative, you know, output is Buckermax, and then there is other mediums where I put myself out, or is Buckermax your artistic moniker entirely?
No, it's not at all my artistic moniker as such.
Hmm.
Basically, like Buckermax is how I've been trying to think of it, and I've been trying to do it. It's far more than me. There's not just my artistic moniker. It's just this particular brand of humor and storytelling that I subscribe to, and I've realized more people also subscribe to it, and that's what it is. Basically, and I have no other kind of work that I would do under anything else. All I do goes on Buckermax, and more people actually also make things that are published on Buckermax. So it's not really a moniker per se.
So this particular brand of humor, this particular brand of, you know, storytelling that you were mentioning, and I understand for artists particularly, it is extremely difficult to define exactly, you know, what their art is. It's like one of nature's fondest laws is competence without comprehension, and creativity sort of falls under that domain species-wide, because as a species we cannot define what creativity or what art truly really is. It's just very difficult to do that, but we can all do it, right? It's like we cannot define the rules of language, but we can all speak in language. It's just it's sort of like that. But I'd like to pry regardless, because your brand of humor, anytime I ever mention Buckermax, I'm like, you've got to see this one particular video, and that will give you a bite into what Buckermax does. And you know, that is Aapki Poojita. That has to be the number one choice that I have. But it's very unclear without that video to describe for me, as a consumer, what this brand of humor is. So let me ask you that. What is this brand of humor and storytelling?
So I think pehla thing is this, whenever anybody talks and they put in a heavy phrase, na, so it sort of delays the color. I just stopped there. Competence without comprehension. That's like, iska pehle matlab kya hai? So, competence means ke you're competent, you're good at doing something. Comprehension
means understanding.
So basically, you're competent in doing something without understanding it.
That's most of nature.
That's most of nature. So basically, you're a good heart surgeon, but you don't know what surgery is.
Right. So exactly, that is precisely the point. When language evolved, when humans evolved, suddenly this law was broken forever. Suddenly we were in the territory of intelligent design, where I knew what I was making when I started making something. Before that, when the ants started making an anthill, they didn't know what they were doing. It was a bottom-up process. When comprehension eventually came, processes became more top-down as far as the human subset of population is concerned. Think about evolution. It just happens. It doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't really understand its processes, but it is still very competent in producing some of the most survivalist species.
That's what nature is: competence without
comprehension. Right.
Achha.
So, and that sort of translates, like if somebody asks me, Prakhar, what do you do with this pravachan thing that you do? Or what is the premise of your podcast? Right. And if I say something like, I just talk to some of the smartest people ever, and on the roster of Prakhar's podcast is Vinamra, and you and I both know Vinamra. He's not one of the smartest people ever. He's a friend of mine, right? So it becomes very difficult for me to use words to, you know, circumscribe what I really do. But your brand, your Buckermax is more niche in the sense that it has more of a pointed delivery mechanism, right? You know, when you see this has to be Buckermax. Help me explain that to somebody who's never seen Buckermax. What is this brand?
So basically, the thing is, people have a tendency to do, you know, not people really per se, but what happens is you take one thing and it goes in a particular direction. So it especially happens with humor. So what happens is, either you have to be absolutely intelligent, you know, and you have to be doing political satire or you know, quoting, extremely sharp, or you have to be extremely slapstick, Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma, that direction, right? Or you have to be, I don't know, you get my point, right? Extremely, you know, well researched that. So what I feel is that you can talk about those bigger things, bigger issues, bigger, you know, aspects. Like you can talk about क्या था वो? What was the phrase you just said?
Competence without comprehension.
So you can talk about competence without comprehension, but you do it maybe using a character like Ichhadari Tatti. So point is that you are saying a big thing, but it's necessarily not saying it's not said in a way that it's, so you can do ghatiya kuda humor also, which looks like ghatiya from the appearance. So it's basically it's pretending to be stupid, more or less.
Right. So here is something interesting. Tell me if this makes sense. Okay. You've spoken to me on a call that was going on no internet platform, and I think that call was way funnier and way more casual and all of that than this is, right? This I have to sort of ascribe to one part of my personality. Prakhar has to sit down and be like, okay, Prakhar is this very, like he knows how to speak his words and all of that. Then there is a part of me that's absolutely ghatiya and disgusting. That's absurd. Jo galiyan bakna chahta hai, theek hai, jo matlab, so I have two very distinct parts of me. One that's very socially responsible, who knows how to handle himself socially, crack the right joke at the right time. And one that's absurd, that is only revealed to people in private settings at private moments. Right? And the funny part is, most of my opinions come from this absurd part. They need to be corrected once this absurd little child in my head is like, Modi ne aisa kyun kiya? Right? Like it's like this instinctive reaction, and then you get into this, what sense is this making? And I've found humor to do exactly, at least your humor, when you have the reference of, say, pedophilia with so much stuttering, and then suddenly he says pedophilia. It's like an absurdist view of a massive problem. Right? As like we just casually ignore, and you cannot, it's not the kind of humor that's made you like, you were like, what the hell just happened? So I think, and this is my guess, it's like the absurdist part making very socially responsible humor. Is that, and not responsible in the sense social justicey, responsible in the sense that socially communicated. It just gets across to people well. Do you think that's true? Is it like an absurdist part of you that's playing with humor there?
Exactly. मेरे को लगता है that's more or less the definition which I would agree with.
Right.
That absurd होगा and अजीबोगरीब बातें हो रही है, but point के बारे में भी हो रही है.
Right.
तो वो point है कुछ, पर वो उसको over the top नहीं किया, उसको मतलब उस पॉइंट ने टेक ओवर नहीं कर लिया हर चीज. और ना ही you're looking down on someone.
Right. Right.
Actually, you mentioned Aapki Poojita, and a very important big part of half the part of Aapki Poojita is also Adhiraj Singh. Adhiraj is my co-writer on Aapki Poojita, and he is basically, he's literally created Aapki Poojita with me. So he's half the part of what goes into Aapki Poojita.
Shout out, Adhiraj. You have no idea. I think you guys are looking into the future when you made something like that. I'm not kidding. It may go underappreciated for another 4 or 5 years, but my man, that is some viral stuff. Like, I have no qualms. But Sumit, you were on record saying that you are more of a writer, less of an illustrator, right? So you are a comic writer more than you are a comic illustrator.
I would say so, because matlab visuals or illustrated storytelling for any cartoonist is means to an end. Matlab cartoonists like illustration, as if visual medium they're practicing it, as if it's not that they don't like it,
right?
But it's not like they die over watercolor mein how many grains are there and if it's giving the right texture. They don't die over that,
right?
So they're like, it's means to an end. I want to say something, I pick a pencil, a sketch pen, and I get done with it. More or less like that.
So that's exactly what I'm curious about. Why did you choose, if the writer instinct is so much more profound in you than the visual artist instinct, why did you choose comic books as a medium and not stand-up comedy or something else?
So one is that I saw this animated film by Yugo Sako called Ramayana, Legend of Prince Ram. Anime Ramayan.
Right. I remember. Yeah.
So when I saw that long back, I sort of, something moved inside me that I sort of, that point onwards, I started falling in love with this illustrated medium where people are drawn. and more it has grown that I don't really at all like any medium of creativity that which has actual real people's faces. So one point is that basically we judge people right on top. We judge people. So when I see anyone, you see anyone, first 5 seconds you see them, height, nata, mota, how they look, you judge them and issue that sentence like in 5 seconds. That's all it takes you. But with a cartoon, what happens is cartoon is a simplified art form. So when you see anything illustrated, it's simplified, it's slightly abstract. So it's not so easy to judge. And even if, in that exaggeration of somebody, jo lamba hai, we've already made fun of them by drawing them too tall. So that joke has already been delivered. So there's nothing left to make fun of. That's one. Second, what I find very, very attractive about these mediums, cartooning, illustration, animation, is that sometimes you have stories or jokes to tell, which you can't tell. So in animation, in comics, in cartooning, you can do anything. So if my joke is about a person shooting coming out of a volcano and then he's shooting the continent of Antarctica out of his ass, that's a joke I can deliver in animation and cartooning. That's not a joke I can deliver
in filmmaking.
In filmmaking also, because in filmmaking also, I usually, as someone starting off, I want to tell my stories, and I don't want to get stuck because I want to shoot a film. Ab mujhe director nahi mil raha hai, can't get lights, and then there's a schedule. I have to find a location. I don't want to get into that. About stand-up comedy, when stand-up comedy was starting up here in Delhi, I did it for. I think my boss wanted me to research stand-up comedy because he wanted me to organize an event for him, and I thought best way to research would be to just sort of do it. And I was writing my graphic novel at that time. So I went around doing it for 1 year or so. And that did a very good thing for me, that my comic timing really improved. And that has stayed. But one problem was that repetition. So stand-up lives on repetition. You have to repeat one thing again and again and again. And I used to be, the stand-up circuit, we used to go to, different clubs, and all these guys would be repeating the same thing. And my problem was, don't you feel bored? Because you've built up this whole routine. There's a whole structure you've built. You have planned everything. And now after that heavy delivery, because it takes a toll on you to deliver a whole set. And after delivering a whole set, aren't you tired of doing that again and again and again? And in comics, cartooning, animation, I just have to do it once. When you see Aapki Poojita, I didn't have to come to your house or wherever you were and perform for you there. I just had to do it once. And that's it. Then I put it up, I'm done.
Right.
Because I think artists ke saath bhi hota hai, you don't want that much love with your own story that you want to talk about again. Like, you just finish it and you have buried it. It's dead. You go, right. You got the tombstone and you just put kuch pata nahi, jo bhi hai. But that's more or less, these are my reasons for why I like this medium a lot.
Right. Do you think cartoons are sexier than real people?
Of course, in total. It's in every single way. I don't know what you exactly mean by that question, but...
No, I mean physically, man. Like I recently started. I was telling I recently started video gaming, and I have almost never video gamed ever since I was like 5 or 6. I've just never been into it. So recently, I realized that video games are the future, boss. I should look into them. So I got an Xbox, and I've been playing these games. And when I play with female characters and they're running, their behinds are right in front of my eyes, and I cannot help but wonder that regular people cannot have that booty. That's just not possible.
So one thing is, I think overall in comics, animation, and games also, actually they're guilty of drawing women badly. But they're not even anatomically correct. And actually they don't, who are the people who make comics? Who are the people who make games? These are
Forwards?
people that overweight, a chashma pehna hua hai, pimple and so what are they doing? It's literally like they're just putting out their fantasies. And actually comics, but it's popular. How do they draw most female superheroes? You've seen them. There's like ek kapda se just nipples covered and crotch covered, and that's it. That's your superhero.
Right.
So it's actually very badly drawn that way, I
Right.
feel.
I mean, it's not. It's supposed to be, to me at least, to my charming eyes, it's supposed to be non-realistic. It's supposed to. So, like, you know, the thought is in wonder of the idea that once we evolve some amount of virtual reality technologies, you know, I think procreative sex, like, you know, procreative sex to have children is just that's the only sex that will survive. Maybe, you know, like you if once you can have sex with cartoons, which sounds absurd right now, but it's not going to be soon enough. I think the game for human biology has forever changed beyond that point. And I just had a thought fart along those lines. But I
think there's, in that category, there's a lot of, I think, porn also, cartoons ko leke, where people make all these comics. And a very good friend of mine made a comic, Chacha Chaudhary pe, where Chacha Chaudhary,
मेरा बचपन
where Chacha Chaudhary goes to, basically aata khatam ho jata hai, and Beanie Chachi sends Chacha Chaudhary to get aata, and while he's out, she and Sabu fuck. And this guy who made this is a really popular cartoonist. He doesn't want that comic to come out, but I'm trying to figure out how we can do, you know, if ever in future we can do, you know, erotic comics and funny ones on Bakar Max. So, matlab, us din ke liye this comics is sitting in my drawer here and waiting.
Dude, I mean, so this is exactly, I think this is exactly your brand of humor. It's an absurd point. It's a point that is super real shit that happens that we just casually pretend like that's not part of society, and you put it out very absurdly, and you're like, listen, you know, I messed up Chacha Chaudhary for you. That's usually what I expect from Bakar Max in that sense. But I think what comics allow, and this is again a very novel revelation. I watch Rick and Morty over and over, like really multiple. Have you seen Midnight Gospel, by the way?
No.
Oh, you should definitely watch that.
Achha,
it's a Netflix TV series. I'm not going to ruin it for you. If anybody's listening to this podcast and they haven't watched Midnight Gospel, it's an amazing experiment in animation and cartoons, like brilliant. So
I saw iska trailer. I got stressed by seeing this trailer because it's suddenly usko dekhte hi, like all I could imagine was 4 a.m. and 5 wo लोग हिपस्टर्स जॉइंट फूक के डूड कितना ट्रिपी है वो कर
ब्रो ये है
मुझे हो गया था
नहीं पता है देख मैं ना एक तो I have given up on liking something is just relatable. I like the art in it, right? So for me it's even though that feeling exists where it's like, dude, this shit, but it's a very repetitive rhetoric in it's being present and, you know, all that jazz. It's sort of like introducing people on Netflix to Eastern tradition in some sense, right? And it's done through the means of like podcast conversations encapsulated in a cartoon that's traveling through space and meeting people in alternative universes. So and what happens is the conversation goes on a track. It's very podcastish, like say this, you and I are talking right now, and the animations take an entirely different track, and they both are sort of diverging and converging. It's like they're talking about the same thing in very different ways. So if I'm talking about me being reborn, and I'm doing that in a metaphorical sense, it's showing that very visually where I'm being chopped up. So it's like very trippy visuals to a very strong podcast segment. That's what it is. Right. So
हाँ मतलब मेरे को basically as a so what happens as a storyteller with me is that आजकल I see that happening more and more, that, you know, more and more stories are, the plot doesn't move forward, it's the conversation keeps happening. So basically the plot being that कछुआ आया और उसने खरगोश को बोला, he says that, you know, you want to race with me or whatever, and then the rabbit is an asshole, then rabbit says something, then we go flashback into rabbit's life, and then tortoise talks to him about 50 times about things that has happened to him and what has ruined inside him, and still they haven't come to the starting point. They haven't still come to the starting point of the race. So and this goes on for like 5 seasons. Then on 6th season they'll start the race, and then further 10 more seasons. And so I feel more and more, I think I see that in
Do you feel like there is a plot drought over in Netflix content, or in general?
In general, I think this whole conversation-led things are sort of, I think, maybe the flavor of the day, and I might even, after I realize money is not coming in, I also might, just because I'm a coward, so I'll just subscribe to that philosophy and I'll start doing that. But I feel there's always, you can say a lot more, but there has to be a plot. Things need to happen. Someone needs to go somewhere, something. So, pata nahi, maybe, I don't know, maybe, pata nahi kyun hai wo, but,
right. But at least what comics allow me to do. So watching Rick and Morty over and over has allowed me to see some of the more, let's say, profound or speculative aspects of science fiction in a very absurd fashion, right? Like you see multiverses and the impossibility of multiverses happening, you traveling through it and all of that. It is almost as if with a comic, because you can enter the landscape of impossible, you can do things that normal humans cannot. You can circumscribe absurd aspects of life and show them very clearly, right? Do you find that to be the case with your comic book? Like Ichhadari Tatti. Tattis don't talk. I've never seen a Tatti talking. I'd be scared to hell if I see a Tatti talking. But what Tatti ke means ke through, you are able to illustrate a point that would just have otherwise been lost. But my question is, ye scale kyun nahi hota? Like, why Rick and Morty is such a piece of I think is brilliant in the way it operates. Why do we not get something like that in India or in the East?
So one is, it's the problem of so two-faceted problem hai. So one feeds the other. So one problem is creators. So point is, we give up way too easily. Cartoonists cartoonist, any Indian cartoonist, any Indian animator, you give up too easily. They just give up. And matlab point is, animators, cartoonists, we need to keep making what we want to make. We have to go to that length where we're ready to, die of proper starvation, it may come to make what we want to make. And at the same time, understand how we can make our story reach the maximum number of people. So that's one at the end of us. There are not too many good ideas, People tend to be very happy with the average. So yahan kya ho raha hai? Yahan mostly it all ends up with the idea. So there are not too many people, coming up with an idea. You don't have to worry about perfecting it. Finish it, put it out. Make one more thing, put it out. And in the process, maybe improve. So if somebody is doing it, you'll have you'll see like 10 animated shots. We have the power of numbers here. You'll have 10 animated shots coming out of India every week. Now, another thing with animation and comics is that it's become a very, everybody here, they see animators and cartoonists, I think they don't want to make stuff that entertains. They really want to make stuff that seems intelligent. And stuff that will win awards, or stuff that would go to maybe a film festival in animation. So point is, because if you want to make something entertaining, it seems maybe lowbrow to some people. That's one. But it's really not. It's very difficult to entertain people. Second is the audience end. So audience end is, India is an extremely big country, and you and I sitting in our ivory whatever, क्या होता है, टावर होता है,
टावर हाँ, कुछ भी
हाथी के दांत पे बैठ के, तो जहाँ भी बैठ के we can think के basically तुम्हारे मेरे बीच में इंडिया चलता है, ऐसा नहीं है. For example, I had a conversation with somebody in Hotstar some days back, ठीक है, and this person was telling me that his friends and his buddies, when Game of Thrones final season came, it came in India on Hotstar, and his friends would come and tell him, dude, Game of Thrones ka last season, your servers would be crashing right now. And he was like, he could not stop laughing because he would say, it didn't make like this one blip on our radar, because we broadcast IPL. We broadcast Star ke sare TV shows. We broadcast a thing called, like, they have a show called, I think, Rangrez ya kuch, and that show, they said, had more traffic than Game of Thrones ka final season ka India traffic.
Right.
So basically what I'm trying to say is that our world, and for this other thing, someone from BuzzFeed had commissioned me a comic one on India's economic history, economic liberalization, वगैरह पे. So when I was researching, this one little fact came in, which was about all built up structure. All built up structure. ठीक है? So your railway station, your railway line, your houses, military cantonments, airport, shipyard, all of that combined in India, कितना percentage होगा? What do you think?
Kitna percentage of what?
Land mass.
Oh, I don't know, less than 1%?
No, it was at
Achha.
8%.
Right.
So 8% of India's land mass is this. 42% something is under agriculture, and rest of, I think 51 or 49 is barren land. So this is the size of this country.
Right.
And what happens is that, you know, there a big number of people are poor.
Right.
There's a poverty. So all those numbers, when you put them into perspective, what happens is that, and that's where, you know, big things like, you know, when people don't do anything for poverty, education, that impacts everything. So it boils down to animation and cartooning also, that you want to make a very intelligent show. Yes. You want to put it out. Yes. You want to make something like Rick and Morty. Yes. But audiences, one is that audiences need to be there for it, paying audiences especially. And because white people don't get our things. White people wants to if white people want to reduce me as an Indian animator or cartoonist to brown faced, yoga, cow, there are 3 things they know, 3 or 4, or IT, call center, outsourcing. That's all they know. They don't know Khosla Ka Ghosla. They don't know all those references.
Right. You're right.
So this is two-faced, how I see it.
Right. The producer and the consumer.
At Bucker Max, we're trying to do it where we're saying, okay, we realize that there is this problem, and we'll just keep making this. We'll not worry about it.
Right. It is. So here are some of the things I think. I am not really convinced that a show needs to be intelligent. I like Rick and Morty because the flavor of Rick and Morty is that of intelligence. Like, a show could be almost anything, because I really liked Ramayan. I can still watch the what's the name of the guy who made it? Repeat the
Yugo
name.
Sacco.
Yugo Sacco's Ramayan.
And Ram Mohan directed the animation.
Right. So, I mean, I thoroughly loved that, and I loved it for the storytelling value of it. There could be different values that are encompassed in all of this. And I'm wondering, because I was going over Devdutt Patnaik's Instagram, and he was doing these Hinduism explained in 1 minute things. I don't know if you're privy to that, right? And he does them very, very well. Like, he takes a minute. I don't know if he's correct or not. It's so difficult to wrap your head around Hinduism, but he does that very quickly. And he's like, and then I was speaking to, I think you know this gentleman. His name's Vimo. Do you know Vimo? Right. Yeah. So I spoke to Vimo for the podcast as well. And he has some interest in the Hindu mythology end of comic book creation and such. And my point is, we don't need to have the most intelligent show when we clearly see the demand for Ramayan right now being as high that it has to be rebroadcasted and people are reconsuming it. Why don't people just do something so proximate?
I'm not saying that, you know, these number of people are not intelligent. All I'm saying is they might not have as much money to support
a project like this.
So because that impacts how businesses make their decisions, all of those. They look at all those details.
So what happened? Please finish. Please finish.
So as far as intelligence goes, I think अगर कोई यहाँ हिंदुस्तान में I think पता नहीं 13,000 की सैलरी में एक घर बना के 4 बच्चों की शादी कर देता, that man must be intelligent, that woman must be intelligent.
Right. No, I see what you mean.
What I am trying to say is that the only solution is to ignore all of this.
Right.
And just
I remember my question. I'm wondering what happened when I was growing up. Comic books were a huge thing, at least for my childhood. You know, Nandan, Tinkle, Amar Chitra Katha, Chacha Chaudhary, and there were a bunch of others, but these are the ones that I clearly remember. Champak, I remember. And my point is, what happened to that culture? Because I'm sure I was on the dying end of all of that. Like, this was 2000 earlys. I think that was around the time when this was fading. What happened to this culture of comic book creation in India?
So one is that mm, when we were reading all this, we were closed off from whatever was outside. We were not exposed to their things, right? So the only thing you could go to was read these things, whatever was available locally. And that led to a healthy local market, where people were making a lot of stuff. And anyways, uh, it was a proper industry. People used to make all these comics. वो सब चल रहा था. But what happened, what I feel happened was that suddenly liberalization happened, more or less. And with that, what happened was Cartoon Network came into our lives, and which I absolutely loved. But that happened, and that sort of, I think maybe there's a deeper, bias to बहुत जल्दी हो जाता है कि whatever is ours, whatever is Indian and ours, for a particular age, below that you absolutely love it. Then there comes a period when you find it extremely tacky. And once you're old enough, uske baad you fall in love with it again. So I think maybe most people went through that phase where, they started finding it tacky. Like after a point, I could not read Nagraj. मुझे मजा आना बंद हो गया था नागराज में.
What is Nagraj?
Nagraj, you haven't read Nagraj ki comics?
No. Tell me more about it.
अच्छा, you haven't read Doga ki comics?
Doga?
हाँ.
No, never. What is this?
I think abhi kuch hua. You have a split personality. Like one is a Gora and other is the Indian. So this time I think the Gora has taken over.
No. Maybe I'm just skipping names. Like, were these particular specific?
नागराज सुपर हीरो था जो सांप शूट करता था हाथों से.
Bro, no. I mean, I might have a split personality in that sense because my mother, I think, because she went to a Catholic school, part of my comic book education was Asterix and Obelix and Tintin, right? So maybe I just never, flowed into that territory. Okay. And my dad was more the Chandan, Nandan and Champak kind of an influence on me.
So Papa was गरीब and मम्मी was अमीर.
हाँ, roughly. और फिर
like everybody else is.
फिर ना वो चार्ट थोड़ा ऐसे, मम्मा गई ऐसे और पापा गए ऐसे, फिर वो कहीं रास्ते में मिल गए तो इक्विलिब्रियम बन गया, फिर शादी हो गई.
सही है.
My dad still jokes about it, like तुम्हारी मम्मी तो पढ़ी लिखी हैं, हम तो ऐसे ही टाट पट्टी के स्कूल में पढ़े हैं. He does that very often.
I think ज्यादातर families में वही है. I think all men marry above their class. Like I think सबकी family मैंने usually देखा है.
हाँ, everybody wants.
Rarely I've seen a garib mummy where mummy comes from garib family. It's always the papa who's garib. And papa's family who you're ashamed of, who you don't. I'm not ashamed, but like.
Ashamed in the sense like if you had to pick.
जब पंगा होगा, जब दंगे होंगे सारे, वो पापा की side होता है. मम्मी की side is like a larger mummy. Like they could get together and they become one big mummy.
हाँ, वो they're all like अरे आ जाओ नानी के घर आ जाओ, वहाँ पे हम आपका ध्यान रखेंगे. So वो वाला sentiment है. अच्छा, if you अगर तुम अपने if you go to your dad's side, वहाँ पे मोटा हो गया है, ठीक है, इसकी शादी कब करा रहे हो, वहाँ पे responsibility वाले काम आते हैं लाइन से.
नहीं, और वो when they start talking to each other, then uncomfortable silence आएगा. फिर एक कोई बंदा frustrated, मैं इसलिए नहीं आता, वो चले जाएगा. फिर वो सब कुछ ना कुछ stress रहता है.
I think this has to do. If I was to sit down on this long enough and observe this long enough, I could probably pick apart the psychodynamics that are going into this, because you have to understand the egoscape of a mummy and a papa are very, very different. Mummy needs no ego. How dare mummy has ego, right? Mummy is supposed to be the loyal servant to the papa, and papa on the other hand is not only supposed to carry himself but everybody around himself. Right, so he has to sort of maintain that discomfort, this tension that people recognize. So it possibly could have something to do with that. Luckily for me, this mummy padhi likhi wala phenomena worked very, very well. And the chauvinism wasn't obvious, is what I'd say, growing up. So that helped me wrap my head around gender egalitarianism. Tell me, Sumit, because I was listening to your conversation with Vinamra again yesterday too. And there is a tendency, even in this conversation, even though I tried to take it on a different track, you sort of move towards these stereotypical intricacies of dynamics, social, personal, all of that,
right?
No,
actually, in fact, let's just complete जो हम बात कर रहे थे ना कि कहाँ वो खत्म हो गया Indian comic.
Right, हाँ, please.
I thought that was a good thought to talk about also. see, these things don't ever happen due to, one particular incident that happens and suddenly, next day everybody's shutting shops. These are trends that are slightly complicated. They come and go, but more or less, I feel what happens are these three things that happen: that there's a larger India, and whatever is being sold to them also sometimes works out. Then there is this middle section India, which was created after liberalization, which looks at उसको बाहर का भी माल मिल रहा है देखने के लिए, कंज्यूम करने के लिए, और देसी भी मिल रहा है. अब उसको जो देसी वाला है, देसी वाले को मिलेंगे 100 रुपए. उसको 100 रुपए में वो बनाना है जो गोरे ने बनाया पूरा $100 में. और उसको फिर अपनी देसी ऑडियंस को बेचना भी है.
Right.
So then automatically whatever a desi person makes gets sort of devalued. So I think abhi jo ban gaya, abhi it's the problem of these three things. So whatever, for example, I end up making, I will be compared to everything best that's out there, right? And which is again, to creatives, that's never a problem. But I think comics mein more or less, I think wo hua, saath mein businesses also, maybe not every business was very well formed and kept itself up to date also.
Right.
Because some businesses are owned by people who was like 70 or 90 साल का वो Simpsons का Mr. Burns बन चुका है, जो still ऐसे करके बैठा हुआ है and still is taking creative calls.
Right.
So पता नहीं, there are a lot of things, and when there's we're a at root, we're a very नौकरी करनी है, and everybody has to do a job, all of that kind of again coming back to Indian anti-crazy, but more or less that, whereas America was, I think, formed on deals, that you take these 10 rupees, then I'll take half this cut and this. So
how do we move around money? How do we move around money? That's what America's formed, right?
So it's a very commercial market. It's like, you take this much of it, I'll take this much, we'll make it together, we'll do this. So that spirit of enterprise, I think, came to us also late. So I think that also affected all the comic book companies, vagera, that there's not, this dying hunger to make things, bring them out to the audience, sell it to them. That maybe that, so I feel that could be. And point is, abhi beech mein there's a whole resurgence that graphic novels saw. But that again, then that shifted, the whole landscape of graphic novels shifted to a very, black and white and very artistically driven, where there's like, I will draw myself as a rabbit and I will go think about the problem in Kashmir.
What does a rabbit do?
What will a rabbit do in Kashmir? And my people burning everywhere. Oh my God. So it goes in that, and then it becomes so fucking boring. How are you going to sell that? So maybe these are what I think are the issues. Maybe.
Part of what's been humbling to me since I started this podcast is realizing how useless my intelligence is. Like, it might not appear to be the case, but when I said competence without comprehension and you called me out, it sort of makes me feel ashamed, because like, all of this is fine, and I understand, I know all of it's really, I don't blame myself in the sense that that's just part of the way I speak and I think now, right? Like, it's
I didn't call you out,
right?
Basically I didn't know something and I asked you उसका मतलब क्या है. जैसे for example, एक बार किसी ने मुझे बोला था, कास्टिज्म समझा रहा था कोई मुझे, उसने बोला था equality and equity are not the same. And जो उसका मतलब आज तक समझ आया नहीं है.
विनम्र ने कोशिश करी थी ना. I thought विनम्र
ने मुझे कोशिश की थी समझाने की, पर पता नहीं, मुझे अभी तक भी थोड़ा एक.
If you want, I can give it a shot.
Okay, give it a shot.
Okay, let's try. Right. Equality and equity. Take equity to be symmetry. Okay. Equity to be symmetry. So, for instance, there is a very good example. You and I are standing. We are the same height. Oh, sorry. So you and I are not the same height. I am 6 feet tall. You are 5'5". Let's just say, right? And there is a brick wall.
Let's make me 6'5" and
okay,
you're 6.
6. Right. That's fine. We can do that. I'm sorry. My bad. Okay. I was going more with the realistic interpretation of things.
How do you know my height?
I'm sorry. I could. You know what? I'm not gonna try, bro. I'm not gonna try.
You're demeaning towards me, like you're calling me vertically challenged here.
Okay. So अब we established that Sumit is 6'5", Prakhar is 6, and we are both standing against a wall that's 7'5". Now we need a certain block to look over the wall, right? Equity would mean that I get a block that is 5 inches taller than your block, because it should be symmetrical.
Okay.
right? Equality would mean we get the same size of the box.
Oh.
So
Okay.
it's just that. So do we get the same opportunity and then see what we have to bring to the table to see where we get? Or
Oh.
is even that part not cared for, and no matter what we do, we get the same outcome? That's sort of the difference. The problem, however, is where do you draw the line for an outcome? Like where is just looking over the wall an outcome, or is looking over the wall and then you do something the outcome? Because if then you do something is the outcome, then you would require that both people are given the same height. Then they're given the equity up until, and then from there. So it becomes very complicated in that domain as to where do you draw the line between when does outcome begin and raw material end. So in real life, it will be like, we give reservations to people to enter universities. And I know you spoke about reservations with Vinamr as well. Somebody is going to be like, listen, why do you want to give reservations to people? Give them an equal opportunity to get in, no? And I'm like, yeah. You give them an equal opportunity, no problem. But there are all these conditions that we need to hedge for. And I don't think the outcome begins with getting admitted to college. It begins after college. So you give people the same access. And that would demand equity up until college. After that, then figure it out. So that becomes sort of the problem with equity and equality. But my general point when I was raising the comprehension and the fact that I feel stupid for doing that. And I by no means implied that you called me out in that sense. But what that means is I've realized in my creative career that there is almost no point being intelligent, because only intelligent people care about intelligence. What a person who's here to learn cares about is me being as average as I can be, so that I'm relatable, so that people understand me. And initially, when artists set out to do their jobs, they think of what they like, and then they want to produce what they like. The second step is corresponding with the market to see if what you like is anywhere on the graph of what the market likes. Right?
So one is obviously to figure out what you like. That takes, I guess, the longest time. Because you spend a long time, you don't know what you're sure. You're not even sure about what your drawing style is, what topic you want to draw about. But after that, I think how I see it is that you basically, more than what the market likes, because if you go down that path where what the market likes and you become so mechanical about it, you won't be able to enjoy it. Maybe you can start thinking of it from a different perspective, and which is basically how there's a big conversation about people who are in the army, they put down their lives for us, etc., etc. So when we look at creative people, this big chunk of people, what we do is we do it from a different perspective. We spend our whole lives. So after I die, my whole life can be reduced to 5 minutes that I bought, happiness for 5 minutes in somebody's life. My whole 70 years of existence, 80 years of existence, 60 years of it would mean that I bought happiness for 5 minutes in so many other people's lives. Right? So maybe that way. So rather than you found what you like to do, and rather than corresponding to the market per se,
corresponding with the market, just listening to them. Yeah, you're not like, acha, theek hai, this is the whole, and I'm going to mechanically fit myself in. People like to listen about NoFap, so Prakhar is going to do content about NoFap until he's popular. More so that you understand where the market's at, and then I think the true creative talent arrives when you've understood what your voice is, you've understood what the market wants, and then you create that bridge. Because it's not really just like you just doing what they like, you doing that, and then the market finds it interesting. Right? So in that sense, it's very, very important to be, at least, like, people should be able to appreciate you, right? And that's what I felt.
I have the perfect example of how you can do this. Like what I recently figured out was that till a point I was just randomly making whatever I wanted to make, right? And it reached a point where we have like around 150-200 comics on Pucker Max, and some are by other people also. But it reached a point where now I can look at those comics and I clearly know what are the comics that are most read by people. And that sort of gives me a sense of what they're corresponding to. And then from that subset, I can choose which ones I also want to make more, and maybe a deal like that.
Right.
I broker a deal between me and themselves.
Right. In conversation with Satvik Mishra, who does Scoop, the CEO of Scoop, he said something very interesting. He's like, listen, one way to handle your content is you make 80% of the content that people love, whatever that is, right? It might not intellectually satisfy you, but that gives you the leverage to do the other 20% that intellectually satisfies you. And then people carry over. So he breaks it down into this 80-20, 90-10 division, where 90% I'll do where I'm not seeking intellectual satisfaction. That I'm doing for the public. Then the 10% I do is for myself. And that really helps me feel like I'm,
And that's honest, and that's everywhere. That's literally everywhere. In everything, that's that. They have the saying, no, one for the kitchen, one for the soul.
Right.
So they have that everywhere, literally everywhere. That whole 80-20 wala dynamic is everywhere. And but more important is two things. One is that to understand that first you have to do a lot more of that 20% before you start figuring out what the 80% is.
Right. Otherwise you just become.
Otherwise what you did was you did two things and just there's a sample set in everything. So you have to do a lot more of that 20% and then figure out from where you put a demarcation within it where 80% lies, where 20% lies. I think his point is, as a business and as a company, I guess more like that.
Right.
But also at the other end, for artists also, I think artists also need to accept that fact. There are a lot of artists who don't, because it's not bad. That 80% is not bad. It's happiness for someone else. How long can you just
care about yourself, right?
Like you can make something for yourself, okay, but if you know something, you know a skill, you know how to dance or maybe twinkle your eyes. मतलब शीशे में देख के खुद थोड़ी हंसते रहोगे. जब वो चश्मे को ऐसे हिलाते हैं लोग, they do it for other people, right?
Right.
So as an artist, you're supposed to also please other people. Do it for some others also.
Right. Absolutely. And here's what I think. This because there is such a selfless grain in your artist side. I have one last question before I can let you be for the night. And my question is this. I think, in my estimation, you are one of the best people to talk about chasing your dreams. And the reason why that is because you did chase your dream, first of all, and you never did that, or at least the primary motivation was never accumulating billions of dollars, because that's where people tend their dreams towards mostly. It was creative satisfaction and absolute independence in some sense, from what I've understood. And I think that for that reason, there are a few interesting questions that are very, very common otherwise, but you'd have an interesting perspective to it. So I want to ask you them. Does creative satisfaction fill your stomach up? Is that a viable life choice for people? What do you think?
I think absolutely, because what happens is it changes how you look at everything else. So when you're struggling, every rupee becomes $1. So when you, for example, you're doing a good corporate job, you have to go somewhere, you'll take the call the cab, you'll take an Uber, you'll go there. But if you've decided to do what you want to do, suddenly you'll not have money. And what you'll do is you'll go down, you'll take the bus, you'll take the metro. And in that process, you'll actually see far more than you would see from the isolated window of a cab. So you start, actually it pushes you towards far better experiences. And in terms of filling your stomach, yes, it feels bad. There are times when happens when you don't have money, and it does feel bad. But when you look at it at the expense of work, and for example, there's this whole weekend culture that has built up. So what happened was, everybody around me, everybody I know does corporate jobs, right? And so 5 days they work so hard, and the reward comes for these 2 days. So there's so much pressure on those 2 days to enjoy. You have to really milk it, those 2 days. And what happens is, these 5 days when I'm working, I literally go out. It's like, wo 5 din, where I live, I think everybody does a job. So mere wo 5 din are like coronavirus lockdown hota hai. I go out on the road like everybody, there's nobody there. I can go and sit on the road and sleep there for like half an hour. Koi gaadi bhi nahi jayegi udhar se. So what I'm trying to make sense of is that, and life is so easy those 5 days. I go to malls, everything is empty. The movie tickets are cheaper. So And
Right.
you know, there are even sabziyan. There's beautiful sabziyan. Like you get the choice. Like Loki, Tinda, they're a freelancer's best friends. They're like 20 rupees kg ya kuch. You start eating Loki, Tinda, and these are every fucking thing that is good for your health is cheap. So these
Right.
Loki, Tinda, fucking disgusting sabziyan which you would never eat, but you're forced with money. So you Loki, Tinda becomes your best friend. You're
Right.
getting all that vitamin D, B, zinc into your body. So
Huh.
I'm just saying that uh, it's not, you know, it's not so dire,
Right.
the point of view. It's an interesting thing to do. It
Hmm.
just changes your perspective, and it pushes you into certain choices which normally you won't make,
Hmm.
which are good choices. You meet better people, you meet a lot of interesting things happen.
Right. And you would make this choice, given, you know, if you had to do it again, you'd do it again.
Absolutely.
100%. No doubt about
100.
that. Do you
Not at all.
sometimes ever wish, yaar, kash mera passion ya mera, you know, like interest was in a more money making creative, or if
So
like India's economy was like more favorable to the comic industry or something like that? Does that come about?
matlab, as a joke I say that all the time. So whenever anybody comes and बच्चा asks me कि comics करनी है कैसे करूँ, I tell them fuck it यार, MBA IAS करो, क्या कर रहे हो,
Huh.
बर्बाद हो जाएगी लाइफ में, भूखा मर रहा हूँ रोज. And obviously I hope like they understand that I'm joking, but I'm pretty sure some of them take it to heart and
वो
छोड़
वैसे ही
देते
डरे हुए
हैं.
आए हुए हैं यार, तू और डरा रहा है.
हाँ तो but I don't think all of those are like what ifs. Matlab, I don't know. I think I have never thought of it like that. Again, these comes, and every creative person has, you know, those bouts of self doubt, depression.
Right.
वो सब होता ही है, सबके साथ होता है.
Huh.
But overall नहीं. मतलब I feel very. So there are things that I used to think I want to draw like this. I want to make this, and whenever that moment comes, na, when this thing I wanted to draw like, and now I'm able to draw like that, I can't tell you how much bliss that feels. Or I wanted to write like this, and now I'm able to. तो वो जो feel होता है वो काफी satisfying होता है. So I think
More than once in this conversation, you have intuitively alluded to some of the more deeper psychoanalytical, and not psychological, psychoanalytical facts, or like theories. So this is exactly what they say. They say part of, and this is Chris, I think this is Adler, he says part of the meaning function, part of what humans really want to do is manifest their internal reality in the outside, and that is all that, you know, is important. And you said something about the excessive pressure to enjoy, right? That's also the, like, so Freud would say typically that the rule book that you must have that keeps you socially responsible, that tells you what you should do, should being the word, if that becomes such that there is a pressure to enjoy, you've already stopped enjoying, because that part is supposed to tell you to be careful and whatnot. The id, the animal part, what I want to do, must make you enjoy, not what you should do. And that separation is very, very important for the mind. So I am I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm sure it has something to do with creating characters that allows you an insight into the human mind that, you know, I had to acquire through plebeian means like books. But एक और चीज I have interestingly in mind. So the reason why I asked you those two questions are because the two malaise, the two diseases of old age are regrets and bitterness. And so if you would do this again, like you said, and if there is no like dissatisfaction, you're not disgruntled with the world, then there is no bitterness and there is no regret, right? So you are literally hedging with this leap of faith that you're taking against probably the two the worst diseases that can hit you later on in life. I still want to ask you that I'm sure there is something that makes you feel afraid going down this road, and you can choose to not share it, but if you feel like there is something, I'm sure there's like, because I've been an artist a year, but I feel very afraid often. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, where is this going? I'm curious if you have those moments and what do they look like?
so. What has happened is, Abhi, we have just registered ourselves as a company, and now, and these are people who have been working with me for the longest time, like for 2 years or so or more. They were helping me in different ways, and now we have said, "नहीं चल मिलके करते हैं now." So Now the biggest fear I think I have is that classically in my life so far, uh, one is I have ran a company once and I didn't run it to ground, but I closed it. And another thing that I started with a few friends back in college, also a company financially heavily profitable, both of them, but I ended up closing it.
Why?
And whenever I've worked, mostly because it was not very creative satisfaction was missing, or I wanted to do something more.
Right.
Uh, Another thing is that whenever I've worked with a group of people, and what happens is that, sometimes what starts happening is, half as things start getting made at one excuse or the other. I sort of get sort of wary of it and, afraid of it. And all these people I'm working with, I also feel a sense of responsibility towards them. And sometimes I can't, create, I'm learning to create a difference between, giving feedback or, being rude, but at the expense of, we want to produce something
Meaningful
of
quality.
lower quality, yeah, or versus, that you're saying good job way too soon. And moreover is that this question of why you said, Rick and Morty, India mein kyun nahi banta aur ye kyun nahi hota. It's very easy to create an individual successful career. It's extremely easy. And but it's very difficult to create an organization that leads to multiple different successful creative careers or multiple successful creative ideas or stories. So that's something which is right now I'm at the cusp of. I have zero idea if that will happen. That I'm not afraid really, but
those are your concerns.
I'm dealing that as a new thing that I'm trying to learn.
Right,
like I learned illustration, like I learned writing. That's something I'm trying to learn how to do this in a way where, somebody looks at whatever we make and says, this is world class.
Right.
This is genuinely good. This is way too good. And at the same time, we're able to make something like that.
Right.
Not.
So it seems like there is cyclical risks that come, right? Like whatever new you do, there is a new set of risks that come. And I'm sure, because this is something I've understood, and I'm far younger and far less mature than you are. Why
are you assuming my age? This is this backside compliment.
How old do you think am I?
I think it's a great way of thought you have. It must be like sliding from your mota pate, because due to my abs, I can't see. What is this backhand खुद को ही compliment क्या भाई?
अरे मैं खुद को compliment कहाँ कर रहा हूँ? I'm 24 यार. I'm 24.
But I am. What do you think? Like क्या है ये? बुड्ढा क्यों बोल रहे हो?
नहीं यार अच्छा एक तो मैं ना I swore to my papa that if I ever interview a guest I'll be respectful. तो मैं सिर्फ पापा की कसम निभा रहा था यार.
गंदा backhand मतलब
नहीं तो ठीक है मतलब मैं
when I look at my biceps, these things, I realize the up and downs of life. क्या है
यार मैं सिर्फ I was trying to credit you with something that I don't think I'm capable of. मैं नहीं करूंगा. मैं बोलता हूँ पहले मैंने कोशिश करी ना कि मैं 6 फुट का हूँ, सीधा खुद को कॉम्प्लीमेंट दिया, तब भी डांट दिया. अब मैं कह रहा हूँ मैं बच्चा हूँ तो भी डांट दिया.
और क्या मतलब बच्चा नहीं, you don't call yourself बच्चा. No, you didn't say that I'm a foolish child. I'm a foolish child who pees his bed. ये नहीं बोला तुमने बोला I'm far younger.
While we're on that podcast, I can tell everybody I do still pee my bed. I still do that. It's still happening. Okay. नहीं, but the general point is कि risk आता है and you take the risk. Like you calculate your odds and you take the risk. So that's your.
I'm like at least it will be a I'll at least become a case study for someone in the future who's an individual artist and thinks acha let me try and run a company. Right. I'll become a case study for that person.
Right. ठीक है. Do you have any questions for me? या और झाड़ना है तो झाड़ ले भाई. नहीं कर ले, मैं बोल रहा हूँ.
नहीं I had one question that is कि how much time do you spend off phone?
Off my phone?
Because when I get up in the morning, I open my phone. It's like प्रखर का 5000 चीज साथ में प्रखर ने podcast भी कर लिया, फिर 4000 tweet कर दिया, फिर तो what do you do like besides
my phone?
Other than phone, मतलब
यार I'll tell you. So what I've realized, over the last 1 year is that I am very good at setting up processes. Like not very good, but better than what I thought. Right.
Okay.
So I have created extremely long processes, delegated work, such that I can spend time doing what I want. I am barely hanging out and like only when I'm doing question answers or alt dictionary, like story stuff on my phone. Otherwise, everything else is scheduled and being posted automatically. So this episode that we record will get edited, put up on YouTube and scheduled for next to next week. And then it'll come out already. And then my team in the back will create the marketing around it. So for me, it's all delegated. I am barely doing that. What I'm really doing these days on my phone is playing chess nonstop. I'm playing 50 games a day, 60 games a day on my phone. Like right after I hang up, I'm going to go YouTube pay and I'm going to live stream my chess games. Or what I'm doing is I'm experimenting with video games. I'm trying to understand what this universe of video games look like. Or I'm reading a book or something. Or I'm, busy fighting my social relationships. I'm busy creating fiction there. But I have, like, ये वही struggling artist वाली बात है ना. Like I'm hungry, I know I can do better, I know I can deserve better, I can get more, so I'm just trying whatever key I can find to unlock the door. That's all. Or plus I'm sure it has something to do with the time zone difference too, and the fact that you really like my content, तो वो बार-बार Instagram keeps showing you it.
अच्छा ये भी बैकहैंडेड कॉम्प्लीमेंट है. तो मास्टर बैकहैंडेड कॉम्प्लीमेंट्स अपने आप को देने का
बेटे बचपन में प्रैक्टिस कर रहा हूँ. मैं लोगों को प्राइम कर देता हूँ मेरे को पसंद करने के लिए. दे इवेंचुअली क्या बढ़िया बंदा है यार, ये तो बढ़िया बंदा है.
Then like वो स्टोरी कौन सी थी जिसमें the person gets this gold ring and they set their whole house on fire just to point saying देखो देखो मेरा घर जल रहा है.
चल ठीक है, मैं अपनी बुराई कर लेता हूँ. If you want to balance the scales out, मैं अपनी, क्योंकि मेरे को उसमें भी कोई शर्म नहीं है. मैंने
No, basically classically I'm just, see, point is you're a good looking man and I can't trust good looking people.
Okay, I'll tell you something.
I feel world is biased towards good looking people. I think ugly people know the honest, real truth of this world.
I was ugly once. I was very ugly once. So, मेरे लिए ना, for me, when I wake up, it is still a surprise that I got good looking. Like मेरे से लोग, it's not just that I lost weight. मेरा skin tone थोड़ा समझ इंडिया के हिसाब से appropriate हो गया, right? और अपने आप ऑटोमेटिकली मेरे मसल्स थे पहले से, मतलब वो जाते ही नहीं है. तो फिर मैंने बोला यार ये तो अच्छी बात है, लेकिन मैं रोज सुबह उठता हूँ, मैं सरप्राइज होता हूँ. मेरे को पिछले साल तो मेरी इनसिक्योरिटी मरी है सारी. तो अभी तो एक ही साल हुआ है मेरे को.
जिंदा करो वापस से
इनसिक्योरिटीज को.
हाँ
यार बहुत मेहनत करी है ब्रो. I worked really hard to get rid of them, man. क्योंकि कोई पॉइंट नहीं है यार. पता है, I'll tell you once we end this call, very honestly, there are still some insecurities, like body image issues. If I look at myself in the mirror, 15 seconds में I start going mota for myself in my own eyes, and I'm just वो फिर फूल रहा हूँ मैं, right?
And उससे प्रॉब्लम क्या है?
I cannot look myself in the mirror too long at all. मतलब मैंने last summer विपासना के बाद या उससे पहले I was like I cannot even talk to myself. I hate my voice. Or not just that, when I look at myself in the mirror, I'm constantly telling myself how shitty I look. Constantly. और लोग ना मजाक उड़ा देते हैं body image issues का. खैर यार, personal problem है. I'll deal with it in silence. I don't want the world to, make space for me. I don't want that. But it genuinely starts like gnawing. In the back of your head, it's always telling you you're not good enough. And that starts showing in your work. That starts showing in things that you do. All of that. So, what deep-seated insecurities, I've also realized fears, shames. So when I started reading a lot of Freudian literature, uska sara concept of shame वगैरह, he's detailed that very explicitly, right? And apparently you develop shame when you're learning how to poop between the ages of 1.5 to 2 years of age. You are learning retention and explosion. So Freud was very twisted like that. He'd have these connections, which later turned out to be true जब developmental psychology develop हुआ. So I remember I was in 6th grade. I was pooping in a bathroom and my friend purposely walks in. And I remember shame just building up like a motherfucker. Just like deep shame of being naked and pooping, right? And my friend looking at me. For months, I did not talk to him. Now we are fine. We're still very good friends and whatnot. But these air bubbles of shame and fear, they remain in your psyche and they never leave. And there is almost nothing you can do to get them to leave. Like up until a few years ago, I would not take my shirt off when I was having sex. It was just not a digestible idea for me. And so I understand हाँ bro, मैं कहता रहा यार नहीं I can't do that. Like yaar so I dug really deep. I know my parents listen to it, so I cannot get into some of the more deeper aspects of how I figured my insecurities out. But I think the one thing that I did right was always chase down things that I was ashamed and afraid of. I think that became my compass to life. I think that became
so basically you haven't buried them really, you haven't put them in a cupboard, you buried them.
I have faced them, made friends with them. I understand. You can joke about my body now.
Cut them, उसकी body को एक एक को काटा है, फिर उसका fertilizer बनाया organic, फिर वो पौधों में डाल के फूल उगा लिया.
हाँ, तो मैंने और कुछ नहीं किया लाइफ में यार. मतलब मैं तो मैंने कोई पढ़ाई वढ़ाई नहीं करी. I never paid attention to my artistic skills. I never read too many books. It appears that I read too many books, but मैं 2-4 ही किताब पढ़ता हूँ साल की. I just read them well, and I read from a lot of sources, and I know how to synthesize stuff. तो वो किताबें, तो मैंने I never focused on anything else. It was always about getting this peaceful, and I tried everything for it.
I can imagine you like in the future start making like one of those YouTube ads one day will come where Prakhar is standing और पीछे 4 कार खड़ी है sports car, like in 1 week I'll tell you how to make $13,000 right now. You're watching this video, you're not making $13,000. I'll tell you, come with me.
Sumit, I'm going to be on your ad screen soon, but I just finished creating a course on how to have a conversation, the art of a conversation. That's right, good. Which I'm तो उसमें भी आपको कॉन्फिडेंस की कमी है, आइए प्रखर गुप्ता के पास.
ठीक. अच्छा, एक्चुअली एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है. So right now, my colleague Raghav Jerath, who is Buckermax strategy head, and person who is sane about money and things like that. The voice of क्या कहते हैं?
Financial reason.
Voice of financial reason जो है. So he actually once he and I were arguing about how to choose our ideas, and right. He actually sent me your that video clip of your conversation with Satvik to make his point. Exactly that video, that bit.
Be right back. I'm going to go shout in. Bro, kamal hai yaar. I'm so happy. Mereko, since I started doing the Hindi YouTube, I felt like this has become my least favorite child, my podcast stuff. Yeah. And so I'm sort of getting back on track. I'm doing the things that I want to, because I started focusing too much on, and I don't want to be a self-help coach. Like, ठीक है अभी साइड में कर रहा हूँ, ले लो information whatever, but eventually I just want to have interesting conversations. That's really my shit. I really don't. I want to learn. I don't want to teach as such इतना ज़्यादा. So I'm glad that even in my absence, even in the absence of my stewardship, somebody is looking into this stuff. Did you tell him that you knew me?
I didn't, because I didn't want him to sort of devalidate his point. वहाँ के मतलब वो बोलेगा कि अच्छा तो ये तो you must whatever. Right, so I just didn't want the conversation to like him to make his point. But
right.
I wanted to bring it up here to just this is a bigger way to that I'm saying him like fuck you Raghav.
Fuck you Raghav, Prakhar is stupid. But was that
but that was a he had a good point, and basically you also I think were good at bringing that point up.
Which one was that?
That whole 80-20 wala mix.
Acha. So you'd already heard that before.
I'd heard that before.
Right. ठीक है. Okay. So yaar, I'm very excited for what Buckermax does. I usually don't introduce the people I'm talking to because that's the weirdest part of an organic conversation. Say Sumit and Prakhar. Sumit, this is Buckermax. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. I'm going to put a bunch of your video links in the show notes for people to find you in any case. Cool. And I hope we can do this one more time, because also what happens in introductory conversations, the first one is I have to sort of go over how does Sumit think in the most formal sense of the word, where I can ask him questions. Now there is a rapport. Now I understand you. The next time we talk, hopefully, if we ever do, if you're up for talking, we can dive into more of the funnier, the more casual aspects of things.
For sure.
I'm looking forward, man. Thank you so much, Sumit.